What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BrianDaddy coming at you with another video. Today we're going to talk about the Azure Vault, a little Mythic Plus guide and how to run this dungeon well. So, one thing to note when you guys head towards the rings, the floating rings between Lamor and Azure Blade, there are random buffs that you get throughout that area. And also, if you're an inscriptionist, you can actually activate those rings to not be traps, but also to be CC for your team. Just a little quick note there, but on your way to heading to Lamor, there are these trees here. You're going to want to interrupt erratic growth from those arcane tenders, which basically channels onto a random player and then it turns them into a sapling for 6 seconds, so it's actually really important to not let that get off. Wild Eruption causes swirls to appear randomly on the ground around the tender, and these deal damage, and they deal a lot of damage, so make sure you don't stand in those. The whole group must keep Mystic Vapors interrupted on the Conjured Lasher, a stacking kickable dot which needs to be controlled and will very quickly stack to the point where it's basically no longer healable. Also, you're going to want to stop the Shrieking Whelp's shriek whenever possible. You can use CC, you can stun, do all that, so that way that shriek doesn't get off. You can also avoid the shrieks and the shriek wings, that way they don't pull more. And once you avoid them, you actually want to go ahead and drop down like we did here. You're going to go ahead and zip around this ring, kill all these trees super quick. Once you've killed all those trees, it will activate Lamor. They have one cast just like before. You just interrupt that erratic growth cast and make your way to Lamor. So the abilities for Lamor is basically throughout the fight you'll be trying to manage the number of trees in the area, using different abilities to kind of destroy them. So, the leyline sprouts are periodically spawned throughout the fight. These must be destroyed using the other abilities throughout the fight, or your group will wipe to the damage being done by the consuming stomp. When a sprout is destroyed, it spawns a bubbling sapling and the same oozlings you fought before the boss was activated. Explosive Brand is a knockback done by Lamor which leaves a circle on everyone in the group, and when the circle expires, it destroys all those sprouts. Consuming Stomp is the ability that does group-wide damage and will deal damage based on how many of these sprouts are alive. So, essentially, you want to spread out, cover as many of the sprouts as possible. I've got 2 of them here. We only got, one sprout up in the back, so that's not too bad at all. Tank, you make sure Erupting Fissure is a frontal that is targeted on you, and once it starts casting, the boss will not turn. This needs to be aimed at as many sprouts as possible, as it will destroy them. So, just make sure you're facing them towards a lot of sprouts to get them destroyed. You do that, and bada bing, you will crush Lamor. Now, as you make your way towards Azure Blade, as I was saying before, this is where you got the double rings. There's going to be loads and loads of trash. There's the environmental hazard traps on the floor, which will polymorph people. Tanks, be aware of basically a lot of mechanics that are going to be coming towards you. Arcane Elementals will cast Arcane Bolt, a kick that deals damage to your tank, and Waking Bane, which will put someone in your group to sleep for 10 seconds. It can be dispelled if it goes off, but the priority kick is Waking Bane. Heavy Tome from the Unstable Curator does a large amount of tank damage and should be kicked, otherwise Forbidden Knowledge causes swirls to spawn randomly around the floor for a duration of the channel. If you stand in one and survive, you'll be disoriented for 4 seconds. Icy Bindings is a group red root with a dot. Cast by the Rune Seal Keeper, it should be kicked, but can be dispelled. Note that only one of the 5 unless playing a priest. So, you can basically break out of the root with anything that breaks root abilities, so you don't need a priest to dispel you. Also, Condensed Frost is a kickable spell that deals damage to your tank, but is not the priority. Crystal Fury does a frontal cone and piercing shards that is aimed at your tank. Crystal Thrasher does splintering shards, which puts a circle around the target, causing them to bleed, as well as deal damage to anyone inside them. You go through, go around the ring, kill as much of the trash as possible. You are going to need quite a bit of it, so that way you get the percentage for your Mythic Plus run. And after you use the Book of Translocation to get downstairs, new mobs will be added into the combination with the mobs that we've already seen upstairs. In addition, the runic traps that polymorph people are here as well. including... There's also an environmental set of bonuses now where there's haste circles and damage reduction. The haste circles look a little bit like a splintering shards animation, so be aware of which is which before you go ahead and, put one on top of your group. Arcane Bash is a frontal from the construct here that does not stop the construct from moving, so be aware where they're facing and the tank is kiting. Unstable Power is from the Astral Attendant. It causes dark blue swirls to show up on the floor and deal heavy damage if you stand in them. Tanks, be aware of the Vault Guard's Ice Cutter, which does a large amount of damage and should be mitigated in some way. Pop a cooldown when that happens. The Scalebane Lieutenants have a frontal in the form of Spellfrost Breath, which deals a large amount of damage, and it's aimed at the tank. So, overall, just focus on killing the trash, keeping stuff away from your party as a tank, and healers. You should be able to get away with doing a decent amount of damage here, unless if a big spike is happening on the tank. Alrighty, here's these Vault Guards we were talking about. These are the ones that have Ice Cutter. Here's where the healer, you're going to want to pay attention to your tank to make sure he doesn't go down. After you kill all the trash in this area and in the room, you will get to face Azure Blade. You don't have to clear out this entire room of trash, but I would say kill a decent portion of it. Definitely kill the Pat and a couple of packs, so that way you've got space to maneuver during the boss fight. Same adage as always is DPS, stay on top of interrupting and getting out of bad. Stuns, knockbacks, interrupts, anything and everything you can to help out your tank and healer. Get the dungeon done. Overall, our group here did pretty well. This is only +9, so we aren't into the thundering aspect yet. But once you guys do have that added on, make sure you pay attention to that, because +10 and beyond, we've got the seasonal aspect of thundering, and it can be very beneficial and also hurt you, so make sure you pay attention to that as well. Alright, moving on to Azure Blade abilities. He's going to summon a Draconic Image that summons a Dragakin around the room. This will shoot Illusionary Bolt at random players, and it must be interrupted because it does a lot of damage. So as soon as it spawns, switch to it, interrupt it like we did there. Ancient Orb, which he had just cast as well, shoots an orb from the boss in a straight line to the edge of the room in any direction. You should dodge it as soon as it happens. Overwhelming Energy causes the boss to run to the center like he is now. It's going to spawn 4 Draconic Images which channel on the boss, making him immune to damage. You must kill all 4 to continue the fight. And while this is going on, he's also going to spawn orbs all over the place. So you've got your seasonal abilities, you got your quaking, you got the orbs, you got a lot of stuff going on. Be on focus towards the boss so that way you can always be dodging these orbs. And just pay attention. That's all I can say, because there's a lot going on. Tank, watch out for the Arcane Cleave there. It's a frontal cleave, so don't aim it at your group. And healers, pay special attention to the Overwhelming Energy, because it does cost a lot of AoE damage to your group. So pop cooldowns, all that good stuff. DPS as well. Pop cooldowns, help your healer out. You can see I popped Ancestral Guidance during that first set, so that way we would stay alive. And now we're at the end of the fight. You don't have to worry about the ad. Nuke down the boss. As long as it has, I would say, less than 1,000,000 health on the boss, you're good to nuke it down. Now we're heading towards Talash Greywing. Note that the Inscriptionist can reverse the runes in the area, as I was saying before. Drachnoid Breakers, these big boys here. They have a shoulder slam that charges a random player, deals a light amount of damage and knocks them back. So be sure that you don't get knocked back into a bad area. Bestial Roar does heavy damage to the group and should be mitigated when possible. The Null Magic Hornswags, the little frogs jumping around, have a Null Stomp where they're basically going to target somebody, jump towards them, and if you're in it, you're probably going to take a lot of damage and die, so don't be in it. You should try to be grouped up, ranged and melee, so that way they aren't jumping all over the place. You don't... Ideally, this part of the dungeon is where you're going to either make up the most time or lose the most time. So really focus on getting through this as quickly as possible. All right, now we have Talash Greywing. His ability is Frost Bomb. It's going to place a ice debuff on everybody in the party. You're going to want to tell your party where we stack in this, inside, outside, keep them as close and tight as possible. You can see what we did here. We put them all towards the outside, and there you go. It makes it much easier, so now your entire group has plenty of room to watch out for Icy Devastator, which you should bring out of the group. This Ret Paladin didn't do so, thus causing a lot of damage to happen to the entire party when it should only happen to just him. Healers, make sure you pay attention. And then you have this phase as well where she goes in the middle and you jump on the rune to not get killed. Again, another Frost Bomb. It's a very simple thing. There's 3 abilities. Frost Bomb, Devastator, go in the middle. And as long as you're making sure that you are moving Icy Devastator out, taking your Frost Bombs to a good location, this boss fight can be super easy. I will say this is not a melee friendly fight. You see how little uptime I have on the boss.
Watch your feet.
So these last 2 bosses I think are really not melee friendly at all. I'd recommend if you are running Azure Vault, you probably only bring 1 melee because it is tough. Now she's going to do Absolute Zero again. So, oh, there goes Icy Devastator. I used a little Windrush Toad in there to kind of help everyone spread out.
Find shelter.
And also to help us get to this rune for Absolute Zero. And look at that. We had quaking happen during that. I ran out and then back in as quickly as I could. Because if we were all stacked on top of each other with quaking, it probably would have almost one-shot everyone. Which would have not been good.
Watch your feet.
And there you have it. There's no trash between Talash Greywing and Umbra Skull, so you'll fly right on down and head to the last boss. So all abilities you want to pay attention to is the Oppressive Miasma. It's the main ability in this fight. It's basically a slow that happens to you whenever you are moving. So you want to try and avoid moving as much as possible as soon as you find a good position. Crystalline Roar is a frontal that targets a random player, as it did towards me. Unleashed Destruction is a large amount of group-wide damage that comes out somewhat frequently. It should be mitigated when possible. Detonating Crystals are spawned randomly by the boss, like here, and they start casting Fracture, which leaves a massive dot on the party if it goes off, and it's basically unhealable, so don't let anyone explode. On the lower difficulties, you might be fine with 1 or 2 getting off, but I'm going to tell you, just kill all of them. Assign yourself at the beginning of the pull. I'll cover left, you cover right, I'll cover back, so everybody knows who's responsible for which area. Arcane Eruption happens whenever the boss reaches 100 energy and causes cracking vortexes to spawn around the room, which slowly move towards players and can generate healing aggro. Tank, make sure you pay attention to Dragon Strike. It's a large amount of damage that should be mitigated in some kind of way. Healer, pay attention to Unleashed Destructions because it will hit your group very hard, and you should make an effort to make sure everyone is topped off before it goes off. And again, healers, the crackling vortexes that are spawned will typically hunt you down as you will be generating the most healing threats. So as such, you should try to make big movements to get away from them when your slow drops, and then plant until it clears again, and then just kind of do that. Make a big movement, stop, make a big movement, stop. And you should be good to go to kill the boss. You can see a lot of stuff's going on right now in Melee. All those arcane orbs, everything. Now we got quaking. Another tip if you're a shaman, that if you have Spirit Walk, it will clear your stacks as well. And there you go. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Peace.